Lucas Hawley never expected danger today. He was only supposed to fix a broken section of the Starbreaker's hull. A simple old mining ship drifting quietly in deep space. The captain told him it was a small repair job. Nothing serious. Nothing strange. Just another day for a human mechanic who worked alone. But the moment Lucas stepped inside the ship's cold lower decks, he felt something was wrong. The air was too still, too cold, too silent. The metal walls carried an echo he didn't like. His boots clicked loudly, as if the whole ship was listening to him walk. Lucas turned on his wrist lamp and moved through the narrow corridor. Dust floated in the light beam. Wires hung like dead vines. Something had powered down recently, and not by accident. The ship felt abandoned, but not empty. Lucas could feel something watching from the dark corners. Something asleep, something waiting. He reached the repair zone at the far end of the hull. The metal panel in front of him was covered in frost, which was strange, because this section had no cooling lines. Mining ships did not freeze anything unless they were hiding something. Lucas wiped the frost with his glove. The cold biting his skin, he opened the panel, and a burst of freezing vapor rushed out, so cold that Lucas's breath turned to white mist instantly. He coughed, pulled back, and slowly leaned in again, shining his light deeper into the open space behind the panel. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. A huge round shape rested behind the pipes, glowing softly under a layer of ice. It looked like glass at first, but when he brushed away the frost, he saw scales underneath, blue, purple, and silver scales arranged in a beautiful pattern, shimmering even inside the cold. His heart throbbed painfully as he stepped back in shock. It was an egg, a massive egg. Lucas swallowed hard. Trying to calm his heartbeat, he checked again, pushing his light deeper inside the hull. And suddenly his hand shook. It wasn't just one egg. There were 2, then 3, then 7. Then another row behind those, and another row behind that. The entire wall, hidden behind metal plates, was full of giant eggs, each sealed inside a transparent dome with frost covering the surface. 500 of them, Lucas whispered. These are dragon eggs. His voice cracked in fear. Dragons were not fantasy in this galaxy. They were nightmares made real, creatures from old wars. Creatures that burned cities, destroyed fleets, and nearly erased entire species. Dragons were banned, hunted, and declared extinct long ago. So why were hundreds of their eggs hidden inside a mining ship drifting in quiet space? Lucas stepped closer to the nearest pod. His lamp shook in his hand. The egg had thin cracks running across its surface, glowing cracks, like veins pulsing with slow, warm light. No way, Lucas whispered. You can't be waking up. He moved quickly, checking the cryo lines attached to the domes, but sparks flew the moment he touched them. Something had damaged the freezing system. Maybe the ship's core was unstable. Maybe someone had sabotaged it. Whatever the reason was, the eggs were no longer staying cold. Then he heard it, a small sound, soft but sharp. A tapping from inside the nearest egg. Tap, tap, tap. Lucas froze. A chill raced down his spine. He stepped back slowly, never taking his eyes off the glowing egg. The tapping grew louder, stronger, more alive. Lucas shook his head. No, not now. Not me. He turned to leave, but the metal doors behind him slammed shut with a loud metallic boom. The lights flickered red. Emergency locks engaged automatically. The ship had sealed him inside. Lucas pounded the door, but it didn't move. Come on, open up. He shouted. His voice echoed across the cold chamber. The air grew warmer. The frost on the domes began to melt, dripping slowly like tears falling from glass. Then the ship's speakers crackled alive with an old robotic voice. Cryostasis breach detected, initiating awakening protocol. Lucas spun around. eyes wide with horror. One egg glowing was terrifying enough. But now dozens of them began glowing at the same time, their scales lit like embers. Pulsing gently, but dangerously, the cracks widened, revealing faint movement inside each shell. "No, not good, not good at all," Lucas whispered as he stepped backward. His heart hammered against his ribs. The ground under him vibrated lightly. The eggs hung together like a choir made of sleeping monsters about to wake. The first egg cracked, a thin line splitting across the top, letting out a wave of warm air that hit Lucas like a breath from a furnace. He stumbled, staring as the crack spread wider and wider. The shape inside moved again, this time stronger. Something alive was pushing to get out. He looked around desperately, searching for weapons, exits, anything. But there was nothing. Only eggs, walls, and the awful truth that he was trapped in a dragon nursery with 500 unborn apex predators. The galaxy believed dragons were extinct, but they were about to be reborn. And Lucas Hale, the lonely human mechanic, was the only one here to face them. Lucas stood frozen between the glowing eggs and the sealed metal door. His breath came out fast, sharp, shaking in the warm mist that filled the chamber. The eggs were waking, and he had no idea how long he had before one of them fully hatched. Maybe minutes, maybe seconds. He forced himself to move, to think, to survive. He opened his toolkit with trembling hands, searching for anything that could help him shut the system down, but the ship's control panel was old. Cracked and half-melted, sparks danced across the circuits, making it impossible for him to hack or override the locks. The ship was controlling everything now, and Lucas felt like a prisoner trapped inside a slow nightmare. He walked along the rows of glowing domes, shining his lamp over them. Each egg had a number, a tag, and strange warning symbols. Some symbols he recognized radiation. High voltage, but some were alien, old, and unfamiliar. They looked like ancient runes from a forgotten empire. The kind of empire that experimented with creatures no one dared to mention anymore. Lucas wiped sweat from his forehead, even though the air was still cold. Something about these eggs felt wrong. Not just dangerous wrong, like they were never meant to be here. Never meant to be found. Never meant to wake. He leaned close to one dome and saw a small data port at the base. "Finally," he whispered. He connected his wrist device to it, hoping to read something. Anything. The screen flickered, loading old files, corrupted documents, and broken logs. But one file opened cleanly, as if waiting for him. Project Sci-Fi, Imperial Asset Stasis Chamber. 500 unhatched subjects. Classification. Extinction level authorized only for high COM. And Lucas felt his stomach drop. "No way," he whispered. The eggs weren't just dragon eggs. They were Imperial dragon eggs, the most dangerous kind. Creatures bred specifically for war. Creatures designed to be smarter, stronger, and deadlier than natural dragons. Creatures that could destroy star fleets on their own. He scrolled to the next file. A damaged audio log played through his wrist device. The voice was weak, desperate, frightened. "If you find this, stop the awakening. Do not let them hatch. The Empire is gone. The controls are failing. The ship must be destroyed." The log ended with a scream, then static. Lucas turned off the device quickly, his hands trembling again. Okay. Think, he whispered to himself. I just need to shut the system down, find an exit, or something. He glanced at the glowing eggs, at the cracks spreading, at the soft tapping growing louder. They didn't care about his fear. They were waking up anyway. Lucas moved along the walls, searching for an emergency vent, a manual escape, anything. He found a small panel with faded red paint. It read manual release. His heart jumped with hope. He pulled the lever, but it snapped off in his hand with a sharp metallic crack. The old machine had rusted from the inside, leaving him with nothing but broken metal. "Great, just great," Lucas muttered, tossing the broken handle aside. Then the ship shook slightly. A deep vibration ran through the floor, like something heavy was attaching to the outside hull. Lucas looked up, eyes wide. Another ship was docking. Not human, not friendly. He heard metallic claws latch onto the Starbreaker's outer frame, followed by the hiss of pressurizing tubes. The sound of an airlock connecting. Someone was boarding the ship. Lucas backed away instinctively. He had no idea who they were. But he knew one thing: they definitely weren't here for a friendly visit. He hid behind a row of egg pods, breathing quietly, trying not to make a sound. The tapping from the eggs mixed with the heavy steps approaching from the corridor above, creating a terrifying rhythm that echoed through the chamber. Boom. Tap. Boom. Tap. Lucas peeked between two domes and saw shadows moving behind the upper door. Tall figures, armored, with glowing weapons. Their voices growled in a harsh language he didn't understand. But their tone made one thing clear: they were hunters. Ruthless and determined. The door above hissed open, and 3 alien soldiers stepped inside, scanning the chamber with cold, focused eyes. Their armor gleamed black, their helmets shaped like fanged beasts. They carried weapons designed for capturing, not killing. Lucas realized something immediately. They were not afraid of the eggs. They expected them. They came for them. One of the aliens pointed at the glowing nests and spoke through his helmet speaker. "The cryopods are failing. Begin extraction before they hatch." Lucas's blood froze. These aliens knew about the eggs. They wanted the eggs. And that meant one terrible thing: the dragons were not an accident. They were part of a plan someone continued even after the Empire died. The alien soldiers moved closer to the pods, reaching for the domes, and Lucas Hale, hidden, alone, unarmed, knew he had only one choice now. He had to stop them, or the galaxy would fall into chaos once again. Lucas stayed hidden behind the row of dragon eggs, pressing his back against the cold domes. His heart beat so loud he was scared the aliens would hear it. The tapping inside the eggs grew stronger, louder, as if the creatures inside felt danger coming closer. The glowing cracks spread across the shells like lightning veins. And Lucas knew he was running out of time. The 3 alien soldiers walked deeper into the chamber, scanning every corner with red scanning beams that swept across the metal walls. Their armor made soft clicking sounds, each step echoing like distant thunder. Lucas could tell from their movements that they were trained hunters. They knew exactly where to look, exactly what they wanted, exactly how dangerous these eggs were. The leader stepped toward the closest dome, his clawed gauntlet tapping the glass with a sharp metallic sound. "Stasis breach confirmed," he growled through his helmet. "The subjects are waking. Proceed with capture protocol." Capture protocol. Lucas didn't like the sound of that. Captured dragons were worse than free dragons. A captured dragon was a weapon, a nightmare someone could control. And now these soldiers wanted 500 of them. Lucas swallowed hard and looked around for anything he could use. A tool, a pipe, even a loose bolt, something he could fight with. There was nothing. The ship was old, broken, rusted, and empty, except for eggs, frost, and death waiting to hatch. The aliens spread out, 2 moving toward the far side of the chamber, 1 walking down the center aisle, closer and closer to where Lucas hid. Lucas crouched lower, holding his breath. His wrist lamp flickered slightly, and he slapped a hand over it before it glowed brighter and gave away his position. The tapping inside the eggs became violent now. The shells trembled, pieces of frozen scales falling to the floor like tiny glass shards. Warm air seeped from cracks, and a soft growl rose from inside one of the pods. The alien nearest to Lucas stopped walking. His head snapped toward the sound. He raised his weapon immediately. Aiming it at the egg, Lucas's blood ran cold. If the alien damaged the egg, the creature inside might panic. A panicking newborn dragon was unpredictable, and the rest would wake even faster. The alien moved closer, inspecting the cracks. "This one is first to hatch," he muttered. "Prepare restraints." The other two aliens stepped toward him. Pulling out heavy metal cuffs connected by energy chains, the sight made Lucas's stomach twist. Dragons in chains, dragons used as tools, dragons forced into war again. Something inside Lucas refused that idea. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't heroism. It was a sudden instinct that screamed this was wrong, deeply wrong. He didn't know why. But he felt like these eggs didn't want the hunters. They feared them. They needed someone who wasn't here to hurt them. Lucas inhaled slowly, then moved silently along the back of the domes, trying to stay out of the alien's sight. He had no weapon, no plan, just desperation. But he needed anything to delay them. He found a small maintenance panel on the wall and quietly opened it. Inside were old fuses, loose cables, and one long metal pry bar. Lucas grabbed the pry bar and held it tight. It wasn't a weapon, but it was something heavy, strong and useful in close range. He peeked around the dome again. The alien leader bent down toward the egg, waiting for it to open. The chains clinked softly as the other two stood ready. Lucas's hands shook, but he stepped forward anyway, edging closer until he was only a few feet behind the nearest soldier. His breath trembled, his fingers tightened on the bar. He whispered inside his mind, "Please, let this work." But before he could attack, the egg cracked wide open. A sharp ripping sound tore through the chamber. The dome fogged instantly as warm energy exploded from inside. The alien soldiers jumped back, raising their weapons, ready to fire. Lucas stopped moving completely, frozen by shock and fear. Inside the cracked egg, something shifted. Something small but powerful. A tiny claw pushed through the shell, followed by a flash of blue light. A newborn dragon, barely the size of a large dog, struggled to free itself, its scales glowing like liquid sapphire. It let out its first cry, a sharp, echoing roar that shook the metal floor. Every egg in the chamber responded, humming, glowing, cracking faster than before. The entire room vibrated as if awakening with the creature. The aliens panicked. "Restrain it now," the leader shouted. One soldier fired a net of glowing red energy. But the newborn dragon dodged, its small body moving unbelievably fast. The net hit the wall with a violent spark. Lucas ducked as burning cables snapped loose above him. The dragon stumbled toward Lucas without realizing it, weak, confused, frightened. Its glowing blue eyes met his for a brief second, and in that second, Lucas felt something he couldn't explain, a connection. Like the creature recognized he wasn't an enemy, the alien leader raised his weapon again. Aiming straight at the newborn, Lucas didn't think, didn't plan, didn't breathe. He just moved. He lunged forward with the metal bar and slammed it into the alien's arm. The weapon fired into the ceiling instead, sparks exploding everywhere. The alien roared in anger and turned toward Lucas. Lucas knew he had just made himself an enemy. All three alien soldiers faced him now, weapons charging, their voices cold with fury. And in that moment, Lucas understood something clearly. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the dragons, for all 500 of them. Lucas held the metal bar tightly, his hands shaking as the three alien soldiers aimed their weapons at him. The newborn dragon crouched behind him, trembling, confused, and frightened. Its glowing eyes flickered between Lucas and the hunters, unsure of the world it had just entered, Unsure of who was friend and who was enemy, the alien leader stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp through the helmet speaker. "Human, stand down," he growled. "The creature belongs to us." Lucas shook his head slowly, fear gripping his chest like a cold hand. "No," he whispered, "it doesn't belong to anyone." The alien raised his weapon higher, anger vibrating in his metallic voice. "You interfere again. You die." Lucas didn't move. Couldn't move. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to save himself. But something stronger held him there. A newborn dragon pressed its side against his leg, trembling like a frightened child, trusting him without words. The warmth of its scales spread through Lucas's leg like a silent plea. Behind them, the other eggs cracked louder, glowing brighter. More shells broke. More warm light spilled across the chamber. The awakening dragons hummed together, a rising energy that made the air vibrate. The entire room felt alive, pulsing, breathing. The alien leader fired first. A beam of red plasma shot toward Lucas. But the newborn dragon jumped in front of him, letting out a tiny roar. The attack struck its scales and bounced off harmlessly. The beam scattering into the air like sparks, the aliens froze in shock. Their weapons humming in confusion, Lucas gasped, staring at the small creature. "You blocked that," he whispered. The newborn dragon growled softly, as if answering him. The aliens panicked. "Increase weapon power." The leader shouted, "It's adapting too fast." They aimed again, charging their weapons to full capacity. But before they could fire, the chamber shook violently. The second egg burst open with a deafening crack. Then the third, then the fourth, one after another. Dragon hatchlings tore through their shells, some rolling clumsily onto the floor, some stretching their glowing wings, some letting out soft, sharp cries that filled the air like an ancient song. The room exploded with color blue, purple, silver, gold scales shimmering like living crystals. The aliens began to retreat, fear finally breaking through their armor. "Fall back," one of them screamed. "They're waking too fast." But their voices were drowned in the rising roars of the newborn dragons. One hatchling shot forward, wings flapping unevenly, sending a small burst of wind across the chamber. Another shook its scales and released a tiny spark of fire, barely the size of a candle, but enough to make the aliens jump. The dragon hatchlings were young, weak, confused, but there were too many of them, too fast, too powerful for the alien hunters to control. Lucas stood in the middle of the chaos, watching the scene with wide eyes. This wasn't war, this was birth, this was life fighting to exist. And he knew he couldn't let these creatures fall into the hands of hunters. The alien leader tried one last time, aiming at a newborn dragon struggling to stand. Lucas stepped in his path and swung the metal bar with all the strength he had. The strike hit the alien's helmet hard, knocking him sideways. The weapon clattered across the floor with sparks. The two other aliens rushed at Lucas, but the newborn dragons reacted instantly. A small silver-scaled hatchling bit into one soldier's leg armor, sparks flying as its tiny jaws tore at the metal. The soldier screamed, stumbling backward. Another dragon released a burst of glowing light more like a shockwave than a flame slamming the second alien into a wall. His armor smoked, his weapon flickered, and he slid to the ground unconscious. Lucas stared at the hatchlings, amazed and terrified. "You're helping me," he whispered. The newborn dragon at his side pressed its head against his leg again. Like a child seeking comfort, Lucas slowly placed his hand on its warm glowing scales, and the creature let out a soft purr-like rumble. A connection formed stronger this time. Clearer, ancient, almost magical. It trusted him, and somehow the other hatchlings began to sense it too. Their glowing eyes turned toward Lucas, their small bodies moving closer, as if gathering around a protector. Seeking guidance, seeking safety, the alien leader rose again, limping, furious. "You fool!" he roared. "You cannot control them. They will kill you next." He pointed at the hatchlings, his voice echoing with rage. "These creatures are born weapons. They know nothing but destruction." Lucas looked down at the dragons around him. Their small wings brushed against his legs. Their tiny claws clicked on the metal floor. Their eyes glowed like soft embers. None of them looked like monsters, no. They looked like lost children desperate to survive. Lucas stepped between them and the alien. "They're not monsters," he said quietly. "They're scared," the alien roared and charged at him, raising a blade-shaped weapon. But before he could reach Lucas, 5 hatchlings leaped together, slamming him into the floor. Their small roars filled the chamber as they pinned him down. Glowing with fierce protective energy, the leader struggled, then went still. Unconscious beneath the dragons, Lucas exhaled slowly. Feeling the tension drain from his body, the newborn dragon at his side nudged him gently, and Lucas knelt to meet its glowing eyes. "You're with me now," he whispered. All of you, around him, dozens of dragon hatchlings gathered, forming a circle, humming softly, sensing comfort and safety for the first time. The alien hunters were defeated, but the real danger was still coming. Because more eggs were cracking, more dragons were waking, and Lucas Hall was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before a human chosen by dragons. The chamber shook again, louder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling, metal beams groaned, and the entire ship vibrated like something massive was pulling it from the outside. Lucas felt the newborn dragons tense around him, their wings rising, their glowing scales brightening like rising flames. He looked toward the upper deck, where a deep rumbling sound echoed through the hall. Not footsteps, not machines, something heavier, something stronger. The alien leader, still pinned under the hatchlings, let out a desperate laugh. "You think you have won, human," he growled. "But you don't understand what is coming." Lucas clenched his jaw. "What's coming?" he whispered. But he already sensed the answer in the trembling metal under his feet. Reinforcements, more hunters, bigger ones. The doors above exploded open with a storm of sparks and smoke. A huge alien war machine stepped inside a towering exosuit, 3 times the size of a normal soldier, its armor glowing red-hot. The suit carried a heavy plasma cannon on one arm and a reinforced claw on the other. Its steps shook the entire chamber, sending fear across the newborn dragons. The machine's cold, mechanical voice boomed. "Target detected. All subjects must be contained or terminated." Lucas stepped back, eyes wide. "No. No, please not this." The newborn dragons gathered tightly around him, their small bodies forming a circle. Their scales glowed like burning crystals, and their little roars echoed in unison. They were scared, but they were not running. They were defending him. The exosuit raised its cannon. Lucas felt the floor vibrate with deadly energy. The cannon charged, a bright red core forming at its center, ready to fire a blast strong enough to kill every hatchling in one shot. Lucas knew he could not fight this machine with a metal bar. He knew he was outmatched, but he also knew he wasn't alone now. He placed a hand gently on the newborn dragon beside him. "Help me," he whispered. The dragon blinked slowly, then let out a small chirp, not afraid. "But ready?" The other hatchlings responded, their glowing scales brightening at once. The humming sound rose, building into something powerful, something ancient, something buried in their blood. The exosuit fired. A massive red beam shot across the chamber, but before it could strike them, the newborn dragons unleashed their power. A shockwave of blue and silver light erupted outward, hitting the beam and shattering it into glowing dust. The force of the clash shook the entire ship, sending waves of energy across the room. Lucas shielded his eyes as wind and light rushed past him. When the smoke cleared, the exosuit stepped back, its armor cracked, its cannon flickering with damaged circuits. The dragons had protected him again. The machine roared mechanically, recalibrating weapons, initiating termination sequence. It raised its claw arm and charged forward, metal grinding against metal, sparks shooting from its joints. Lucas stood his ground, gripping the bar, heart hammering. "Come on, come on. Please," he whispered. The newborn dragons finally understood his voice completely, understood who he was to them. They moved as one, surrounding him like a shield of glowing scales and tiny wings. Their combined hum vibrated through the air, rising higher and higher until the metal floor trembled beneath them. Then they attacked. 10 hatchlings leaped up together, their bodies glowing like meteors, striking the exosuit's chest with incredible force. The armor cracked, a deep dent forming. The machine stumbled, trying to regain balance. But the dragons kept coming, 3 biting at its legs, 2 clawing its arm, sparks flying everywhere. Lucas saw his chance. He ran forward, jumped onto a fallen crate, then onto the exosuit's damaged shoulder. He raised the metal bar high and slammed it into the exposed energy core on the back of the machine. The bar sparked violently, electricity surged, and the exosuit roared in distortion. "Come on. Break, break," Lucas shouted as he struck it again and again. Finally, the core shattered with a blinding flash. The machine froze, trembling, then collapsed to the floor with a massive crash. The entire chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the hatchlings. Lucas slid down from the machine, shaking, gasping for breath. The newborn dragons gathered around him, pressing their warm crystalline bodies against his legs, arms and chest, comforting him, thanking him, choosing him. The alien leader stared in disbelief, still pinned and terrified. "Impossible," he whispered. "Dragons do not follow humans. They obey no one." Lucas looked at the hatchlings, then back at the alien. "Maybe they don't need someone to control them," he said softly. "Maybe they just need someone who doesn't hurt them." The alien looked away, defeated. The ship creaked again, this time not from danger but from life. Hundreds of eggs had hatched now, hundreds of small dragons stretching their wings, glowing like newborn stars in the dim chamber. They looked at Lucas with soft, curious eyes, recognizing him as the first face they ever saw, the first protector they ever knew. Lucas slowly knelt down, placing a hand on the newborn dragon beside him. It pressed its head into his palm, purring. He whispered, "Let's get out of here." The dragons chirped in agreement, ready to follow him anywhere. And in that moment, Lucas Hall became something the galaxy had never seen before. A human chosen by 500 dragons, a protector of a reborn species, a legend the stars would never forget.